Welcome to another episode of Your Money, Your Mission, the podcast designed to turn complex financial situations into actionable advice, powered by Johnson Financial Group. In today's episode, we delve into how young professionals can achieve financial stability and growth. Joining us today is our very special guest, Melissa Olson. Melissa is in charge of our wealth education at Johnson Financial Group. She is dedicated to empowering individuals to take control of their finances through education and personalized guidance. With her extensive knowledge and experience, she assists clients in navigating their financial journeys, always with patience and a keen understanding of their needs. Melissa, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you, Kelly.
So I know you have a lot of great advice for people of all ages, but I also know you have three beautiful daughters, aged 28, 19, and 18. That's correct?
That is correct.
So I imagine you have done a lot of guiding them with their financial beginnings. Can you tell us what kinds of foundational things you would tell young people today who are just starting their careers?
Absolutely. I think the first piece of advice I would give is when it comes to talking about money, it begins at home. Right? You start with the basics and teaching the value of the dollar. Mm-hmm. And then as you age and progress, those conversations become more applicable. Once they get a job in high school or beyond, then you start talking about what is a need versus a want. And really teaching from a young age, starting out, to live within your means, right? That not always is it about impressions from the outside or so-called keeping up with the Joneses, but it's about truly cultivating a life that you can afford to live while being able to save for whatever that next chapter looks like or those big goals along the way.
So I imagine goal setting is also a big discussion, and that sometimes can be difficult for a young person to focus on. How do you talk about goals and how to start with those early goals and move into more long-range planning?
Yeah, I think the easiest conversation for most people is, determining whether or not further education outside of high school is going to be part of the equation, right? And then showcasing what that cost actually looks like versus the occupation that they're hoping to study versus the jobs that can lead to future income. So that's one very easy goal, but you can actually even take it a step back further. Now, having three daughters, there's a lot of cost that goes into things. And there are certain things right out of the gate that we built into what mom would cover, what mom would help fund, like partial payment, and what is fully their responsibility. And so with a daughter, that's very simple because girls come with a lot of excess: nails, hair, makeup, shoes, sports, you name it, along with boys, right? So you can determine. But you just set those boundaries, and you set those boundaries right out of the gate so they know what the expectations are, because then that forces them to save. It forces them to recognize that, maybe going out to dinner with friends all the time isn't what I want to do because I want to get my nails done next week and I know mom won't pay for it.
That makes a difference between needs and wants.
Very much so, but also basic goals versus long-term strategies. Because sometimes when you're young, it's hard. Right? It's hard to see the bigger picture. You're just working on finishing high school. You're just working on, what does that next step look like? Am I going to live at home? Am I not going to live at home? What are all these costs associated? And it can be overwhelming. So I would encourage people to just take a step back and start simple.
Right. And I'm sure as they started to reach the end of high school, conversations about college and the expenses of college and the choice of college. And I know you have clients talk to you about that as well. Where do you have clients start when they do that analysis?
Yeah, so one of the biggest things that I always talk with clients about, especially when there are young professionals, in whether you're raising those young professionals or you're helping a 20-something navigate through adulthood, right? Those are two different conversations. But one of the very first things that we talk about is you have to compartmentalize those goals. So money isn't the goal. Right? Money is the tool to help you reach those goals. And that sometimes is more of a psychological behavior when it comes to behavioral finance, reframing that money is not the goal. Oftentimes people say they want to be millionaires, right, within their adulthood. And I remind people that you will be. If you are gainfully employed working full-time with a minimum of $50,000 a year, you will be a millionaire. Whether you spend it or whether you save it is a different conversation.
I imagine that's a very intriguing thought.
Absolutely.
So do you often talk to them about budgeting?
All the time.
And budgeting sometimes can feel like a really negative word. How do you frame that so they understand that actually is a pathway?
Yeah, so we refer to it as actually creating a balanced spending plan, right? So it's designed with the whole premise that you're giving yourself permission to spend money, that you're not confining yourself to a specific budget each year, but then it also constantly revisits whether or not you're living within your means. Or are you stretching yourself too thin and relying on credit card debt, which is, we all know, really bad debt, to be able to make ends meet within your day-to-day lifestyle. Because those are lifestyle choices, right? I will never tell a person how to spend their money, but I will encourage them to take a look and constantly revisit what that spending plan looks like. Because if they get off course a little bit, it will impact their overall retirement strategies.
I know both of us have done a lot of work with counseling people on budgets and how to really gain financial literacy. One of the things I find is that if they're willing to be open to those concepts, one of the benefits they have is control over their choices and that ability to dream, but also being able to establish those behaviors. Would you say that also goes a long way in helping reduce stress and improve mental health if people really stick to this?
Absolutely. Money is extremely stressful, right? If you talk about it openly at home, it alleviates some of that stress. But most often, for our generation, we were raised in households that may or may not have talked about money openly. It may have been frowned upon to talk about money on a need-to-know basis, right?
Right.
And kids just
Very
didn't need to know.
Right.
Well, I'd like to change that dynamic. I think you have to open those doors to have those further educating conversations so we develop really positive habits right out of the gate. So when it comes to, creating a balanced spending plan, focusing in on saving strategies, developing those good habits right out of the gate, then as you grow, right, in your career, as you grow in your ability to earn income, your lifestyle adapts with you. But if you're automatically following those spending plans and those saving guidelines, it's a non-issue because your lifestyle will adapt to what you bring home. I've seen it happen time and time again. So if saving becomes just as important as a fixed expense like a mortgage or a rental payment or groceries on the table, right, then it's a non-issue. So I think that alleviating some of that stress by consistently following up on your spending plan, on what those saving strategies look like and what those goals are, it becomes part of everyday life. Right.
Are you finding people are more willing to have family conversations about money? Because I agree with you. When I grew up, that wasn't a discussion. It was very private, and it was a real detriment in what I knew when I became an adult because I wasn't exposed to a lot of those conversations. Do you feel that that's changing?
Yes, absolutely. With the economic cycle that we're currently in and the costs of things, it has to. Because more and more parents can't help as much as they would like to. So the cost of education alone has risen 400%, right, in the last 25 years.
Right.
So from that perspective, really honing in on establishing an education strategy that matches a career path that will actually help fund what that looks like, right? Making sure that you're having those open and honest conversations. And not everybody needs to further their education, right?
Right. There's a lot of choices.
The labor market, you can earn just as much right out of the gate. So I think it's more of a raising children outside of the norm because the norm has changed itself, right? So you don't have to conform to any society. The path is yours. And what we always say in our household is the path is forward. You get to decide, but just make sure that you're constantly revisiting what that means to you from a monetary perspective.
And you brought up our current economics environment, which is challenging for many families. One of the things that we often talk about when we're helping someone acquire the right kind of behaviors is establishing that emergency fund. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because I do run across a lot of folks that haven't got an emergency fund, and that's a really critical piece, isn't it?
Well, we have startling statistics out there, right, that show that most households don't even have $400 set aside in liquid assets in the event of an emergency. And emergencies happen every day, right? It's not a matter of if it's going to happen, it's a matter of when. And we're talking car repair, medical expense, just those tragedies that occur in everyday life. So what I would encourage people to do as they start their savings journey is automatically, again, money has purpose. It's not the goal, it's a tool. So money has purpose to set aside funds that are easily accessible and forget that they're there. Their job is not to make a lot of money. Their job is to be available in the event of an emergency. So start small. If you're young, right? If you're young, start small, $500 to $1,000 in a savings account. That is not there, right? It's available if you have to. If you don't have a good relationship with money, open an account at a bank where you don't download an app. So just make it inaccessible or inconvenient.
Right.
And then to build over time to 3 to 6 months worth of living expenses in an emergency reserve. And then as you age and life only gets more expensive, you set aside more and more of those funds.
Right. And you have a clear understanding of what an emergency is.
Correct. It is not a trip to buy new shoes. It is not spring break if you are a young professional, right?
It's not an emergency.
Exactly. Those would be other goals, what we refer to as short-term goals, right? Things that you want to obtain 1 to 3 years.
Right.
Again, not dictating how you live your life, but dictating what it actually means to you on paper and what it's going to cost to fund it.
Right. So with a young person just starting out their very first full-time job, they're often faced with having to make the decision about participating in the employer-sponsored retirement plan. What advice do you give new employees who are considering that?
Yeah. So one of the things that I always say to 20-somethings joining the working world is I would never come up to them and say, what does retirement look like for you? No, that's the wrong focus, right? You don't know. You're just trying to figure out this thing called adulthood, paying your bills, you have a job, we're showing up on time, we're earning that paycheck. But what I do encourage is to change the scenario. It's not about retirement right now for you, it's about saving. And right now, if not you, then who? And if not now, then when? Because I always encourage communication in the workplace as well. So it starts at home, builds through the education system, and continues into the workplace from a financial literacy standpoint. Because we as peers, right, can offer a lot of advice of what we have been through.
Right.
And the one thing that we constantly hear all the time, right, is would have, should have, could have. Right? I have yet to meet an individual, and I've been in the industry for 18 years, that says, gee, I wish I would have started saving later or saved less. So it's always the opposite.
Right.
So my advice to the young professional is if you have access to a retirement plan in any facet at work, participate at the bare minimum to get started and then revisit each and every year, because it's easier to do when you're younger than it is in your 40s and 50s to make extreme lifestyle changes to help begin funding a saving strategy.
And if they fund it, they can treat it much like that emergency fund. You don't even miss it. You're budgeting for what you have. And if there are matching funds, not participating in that is actually leaving money on the table.
100%. We always tell individuals right out of the gate, start participating, the minimum is the match, right? Then you continue to build. And we really do encourage an individual investor to save anywhere up to 10 to 15% on an annual basis. So as life gets more complicated, if you introduce a partner or spouse, right, and there's a dual income household, that 10 to 15% is individual. I would definitely encourage the spouse or partner then to match that effort.
And again, that allows for more choices. You're starting to build assets and things like purchasing homes. That all becomes something that's easier to do when you have a savings cushion.
Correct. You know, we focus in on 3 specific areas, and I always tell people you have control over 2 of them. So you have control over how much you make. And now by no means am I saying go to your HR director and demand a raise. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is, can you spend your dollars wisely, right? So you can make them reach further. And then you also have control over how much you save. That's a conscious choice built directly into your spending plan, built directly into your saving strategies and goal planning. But the third component of that, if you don't control the first 2, you'll have no control over the other one. And that's called delay the day. And that might be delay the day of a purchase, delay the day of a wedding, delay the day of retirement. And nobody likes to have that conversation. So if you're as proactive as possible, then you have those choices later in life.
And for a young person who maybe is starting their own business or not working with a company that offers a plan, what options do they have to get started?
Yeah, there's several different options out there. Working with a dedicated financial advisor or financial planner to help you understand all of the different facets of an investment portfolio, right? So you have your traditional IRAs, your Roth IRAs. For those individuals that are self-employed, it might be a SEP or a simple plan. So it builds over time and comes with a lot of regulation and legislation that's continually changing. So my advice is to find a trusted advisor that you can work with and that they will help guide you through what a savings strategy looks like from a business perspective.
So I know when I was younger, I made a lot of financial mistakes.
We all.
That had I known what I know today would be much different. What are the most common mistakes you see today that you try to help folks avoid as they take this journey?
Yeah, so I think the biggest conversation pieces, right, that can easily derail a saving strategy would be debt. Okay. So we talk a lot about good debt versus bad debt. If you don't know the difference, good debt is anything that accumulates value over time, right? And bad debt is anything that decreases in value almost immediately, or that you are indebted to a financial organization, whether that be through loan, through credit card. So from that perspective, debt is always one of the first topic points, and then it bleeds right into that balanced spending plan. Now, the biggest thing else, too, that's easy, right, is not participating in a retirement plan. Well, that's just an easy conversation. Can you make slight adjustments at home? And most often we'll have to back into an equation to show them just how minimal the cost is.
Right.
So if you think about, we all have bad habits. We all have, something that we're not going to give up, such as a daily coffee trip or, what have you. But
subscriptions that have become out of control.
Yeah. But that's one question I do often ask is how many subscriptions do we all have now? It's 7 to 9 normally.
7 to 9.
7 to 9. Yeah. But from that perspective, setting aside a savings strategy then and backing into that number to show just how affordable it actually is, and then encouraging and following up. So encouraging people to give it 30 days and then to give it 60 days and then to follow up at 90 days. Are you feeling okay? Is it really that difficult? Because that just shows them, oh, okay, this isn't difficult at all. I don't know what I was doing with my money before, but I don't actually miss it.
So some of the other things that I think young professionals don't think about, one is creating this plan and how easy it is to actually establish a goal that's with short-term marks and long-term planning, but also is how important it is to have some of those estate planning documents as a young professional or young family.
Yeah.
Do you talk about that much with folks as well?
We do in several different facets. So the very easy conversation is beneficiaries, right?
Right.
So a beneficiary is a legal document. Attach it to anything from a financial perspective because it will bypass probate. Then your desires and wishes when you are no longer here carry forward. But life happens. Life happens consistently. So if you ever go through a significant life change, and this is a reminder for everyone, right? And I use 2 examples all the time. If you go through a divorce, please take 2 minutes of time to update your beneficiaries because nobody enjoys giving your assets to your ex-spouse.
That's right.
And if you're an individual that's going to have children in life, right? Well, not only are there less pictures of that third child in your home, but you've also forgotten to add them to the beneficiary statement. So I use those.
Very good point.
I use those in jest, but that's a good reminder as a simple starting place. And then it goes further, right? Powers of attorney.
Critical.
Right. 100%, both from a healthcare perspective and the financial perspective. It's if you are incapacitated and can't make those decisions on your own, who do you want to make those very, very important decisions about your life? So that's one easy thing to do. And then again, if you are going to add children into the picture, guardianship is so very, very important for minor children because it's not a matter of who you want to raise your children. You don't want anyone to raise them except you.
Right.
But again, the reality of life happens.
Right.
And we've all been through tragedy.
Yes.
So divorce, multiple children, a death in the family, a tragedy of no longer working, you have to account for those what-if scenarios because they are reality.
And that's such a great point, Melissa, because so many people don't realize when that child turns 18, should something happen to them, you as a parent are not necessarily going to be included in those decisions and those updates at a hospital or through a doctor's if that power of attorney isn't in place. Sadly, my children's 18th birthday, they all got power of attorneys.
That's okay. It's perfect.
They got dinner too, but we did our power of attorneys for healthcare and finance.
Some people get presents, other people get powers of attorney. It works.
So any final thoughts for folks? I mean, where can someone who maybe doesn't have, hasn't had these conversations in the family and is looking to, gain more financial literacy, where can they go to get some of that information?
Absolutely. So if you're an individual that's just desiring more information or from a conversational starting point, reach out to us at Johnson Financial Group. We're happy to connect you with individuals, regardless of where you're located, to begin those conversations about from a financial planning aspect, right? That plan is easy to do if we break it down by decades to make sure that your checklist, that you're addressing everything from a foundational standpoint. That way, when tragedy occurs, you are already prepared for it from a proactive standpoint. The biggest thing in turning 18 is you are absolutely right. Parents lose a lot of that control or conversational pieces, not only in the education world, but the medical world as well as the financial world. So it's in our best interest to not only start and cultivate those conversations early, but then continue them with them as adults. And you can support that journey by just continually checking in and making sure that they have special guidance. If you don't at home or you don't feel comfortable, then reach out to a professional such as a financial advisor, financial planner, or here at Johnson Financial Group.
Right, and most financial institutions now have website tools, budgeting tools, planning tools,
ton of them out there.
Credit reporting things, so that even searching in your own company's website, whoever that is, can be helpful. And of course, podcasts like Your Money, Your Mission will offer lots of information as well.
Yeah, I would tell you, make use of apps that you are comfortable with. Don't ever pay for an app, because there are several good tools out there, through whether that be through your financial institution or through a specific app, that offer you guidance. If it's something that you're struggling with, right? If it's a specific area, whether that be debt pay down, then there are tools available for you to make use of and get yourself on a better financial path.
That's great. Melissa, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you, Kelly.
And thank all of you for joining us for this episode of Your Money, Your Mission. If you have questions you'd like us to address, please go to the show notes, write your question, and hit submit. Remember, to subscribe so you don't miss out on future episodes of Your Money, Your Mission, the podcast designed to turn complex financial situations into actionable advice, powered by Johnson Financial Group.
This podcast is not a recommendation to buy or sell any investment or financial product. Whether a particular investment or financial solution is right for you depends on the facts of your particular situation. Please consult your own professional advisors prior to taking any action based on the content of this podcast. Wealth management services are provided through Johnson Bank and Johnson Wealth Inc., Johnson Financial Group companies. Additional information about Johnson Wealth Inc., a registered investment advisor, and its investment advisor representatives is available at advisorinfo.sec.gov. Not FDIC insured, no bank guarantee, may lose value.